controversy after President Obama hints he might be prepared to establish a new U.S. embassy in Tehran if the U.S. reaches a deal with Iran on its nuclear program. In an interview with NPR, the president says, quote, "I never say never, but I think these things have to go in steps. If we can get a deal on making sure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, and that deal is possible, then my hope would be that that would serve as the basis for us trying to improve relations over time." Now, if you remember the last time the U.S. had an embassy in Tehran, it was 1979, a very low point in modern-day U.S. history. 52 Americans held hostage for an agonizing 444 days after Iranian students stormed the embassy compound. Some of the U.S. hostages were beaten, tortured, even underwent mock executions. Former U.S. ambassador to the UN, John Bolton, says the president's remarks on Iran are, quote, naive.
Why do you think that American recognition is going to change this regime, which not only has been pursuing nuclear weapons for 30 years, but since it came to power in 1979 has been the principal financial sponsor of international terrorism all over the world? There's no indication the president understands how committed the regime is to this kind of policy.
All right, obviously, Ambassador Bolton very upset about this. Now, Pete, let's discuss, because there's a huge difference between opening an embassy, say, in some place in Cuba, and going back to Tehran. This can't possibly happen. The president was clearly out of his mind for a moment, correct?
I don't think he was. I think this is something this president would very much like to see, and if you look at his track record, it's exactly where he want to go. If you remember in 2007 in the Democratic debate, he asked if he would meet with foreign leaders without precondition: Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and he has in many ways lived up to those promises, opening them up. And what are we getting in return? Nothing. Has the nature of the regime, has Ayatollah Khomeini changed his tune? Absolutely not. We are still the great Satan. Israel still needs to be wiped off the map, according to them. And yet, we're sitting at the table, basically stamping approval on a nuclear bomb for them eventually, and talking about a possible embassy. It's foolish and it's foolhardy.
It is foolish. I mean, obviously, you know, we want freedom, we want democracy throughout the world. Cuba, very different story than Tehran. This is a theocracy. This is a regime that's very dangerous to Israel. How could they possibly be feeling about this weather balloon being floated?
And they're very dangerous to the United States. I mean, let's not forget things that have not changed since 1979. I mean, it's not like we've rekindled our good relationship with Iran since they took our hostages and eventually they were released. And, you know, John Bolton makes a really good point. Iran is a central state sponsor of one of the largest terrorist organizations in the entire world, which is Hezbollah, and they have allies in South America that are closer to the United States. And so, you know, I just don't understand what the point of this is. It's very confusing, just like President Obama's foreign policy in general. And again, he's giving them something first and then saying, well, we might build an embassy and then rekindle our relationship and make that relationship better, rather than making the relationship better first, getting concessions from them, getting a good deal on their nuclear program, which we still don't know is going to happen, probably won't happen, and then moving forward instead of doing those things first and then following up with changing that relationship.
And this seems to be the cornerstone of the Obama doctrine. Promise something, do the opposite, become a total hypocrite, and then promise something again that could actually undermine global peace. Do you think this is a good idea?
Well, everybody has to calm down. I'm not getting my bikini to vacation in the Persian Gulf anytime soon, because that's not what this president is suggesting. Listen to what he said. He said, if we arrive at a deal, maybe over time we could work something out. We're not opening up an embassy tomorrow. Nobody's going to Tehran tomorrow. They have to obviously show some metrics. A nuclear deal will be a start, and then we'll see, is basically what he's saying.
But the problem is, say they show metrics, you know, say they give us some believable data, and it's a total fabrication, and meanwhile they're actually building a bomb.
Well, I assume we're not total chumps, and I assume that if they're going to show us some data, we're going to trust but verify, as Ronald Reagan said. Well, that's exactly what we have to do.
Why not say off the bat, though, conditions haven't been met thus far?
That's exactly what he said.
Immediately. That's not what he's saying.
Listen to what he said. Listen to what his quote. If a nuclear deal with Iran is reached, it would serve as the basis, not a confirmation, but as the basis for us to try to improve relations over time.
And at the same time, he's saying, I'm going to veto any new sanctions that the GOP wants to put forth. So what is his agenda? But what is his agenda? And Pete, I would love to get your opinion about those sanctions, actually, because many people, when they hear that, feel, well, that hasn't worked in the past, that hasn't been effective. So what should the president, in your opinion, how should he have responded to that in order to say, you know what, you haven't given us anything thus far, we're not going to cave, we're not here to basically meet your needs. What is the appropriate answer for the commander-in-chief?
I think the appropriate answer is moral clarity. clarity. I mean, you've got U.S. soldiers that have been killed by Iranian-backed organizations and weapons for years on foreign battlefields. They are committed to our destruction. You have to be willing to say that up front. The president, in his speech, Barack Obama said, has liked to cite Ronald Reagan to say he talked to the Soviet Union. He was open to that. Well, everyone knew Ronald Reagan was an anti-communist. They knew in his heart of hearts who he was. People don't know who Barack Obama is and what he truly believes about America's role in the world and its leadership role. And as such, they worry when he floats a trial balloon that he just might.
And Pete, by the way, Iran has also been engaging in some delicious anti-Israel rhetoric from their point of view. And, you know exactly where they're coming from, whereas, to follow your point, the Soviet Union was in decline. We had them on the ropes.
We were negotiating from a position of strength, whereas here it's not clear where we are in that.
Yeah, and you have to take a look at how the president did this, right? It baffles me how the president comes out with these huge statements about foreign policy in interviews with people like NPR. I mean, does everyone else on his foreign policy team know that maybe he's potentially considering opening a U.S. embassy? Do our allies, do the Israelis know this? I mean, or is it just something that he floated out there?
No, I think it's something that he floats up. I really do.
It's like the red line.
Like it's just some policy perspective that they might pursue. I mean, that's a really big deal, and the Iranians are paying attention to that, and they know that they have a bigger ally in Barack Obama with that than Barack Obama does.
Go ahead, Julie. But what is he? So you think this is some underlying greater foreign policy strategy regarding Iran?
I assume I'm going to take him at his word, where if the Iranians show some good faith in actually not creating a nuclear weapon, which is something that every administration has been working on, Bush worked on it. I mean, this has been an issue for a very long time. And if at that point the Iranians actually show some metrics and say, wait a second, we're going to be a good faith actor, we're not going to develop nuclear weapons, then and only then is he saying, let's explore these possibilities. But he's not saying, hey, let me give you an embassy, let me restart relations, and then, by the way, I hope you guys are going to be good, fingers crossed, we're going to be able to not...
But that's what good faith is in this regard, because I don't think you can trust Iran right now.
I think Iran,
then they're not going to get an embassy.
When I think Iran, I think good faith.
Yes, that's exactly what
I got to tell you guys.
Theocratic state sponsored terror.
What you're missing here is that nothing is going to change until the Iranians do something to change it. And until they do that, we're not getting an embassy. So what do we, I worry about John Bolton. He gets so exercised about things and gets so nervous about them. We're not going to have an embassy until there's an actual...
Optics matter.
But does it affect, does saying this affect our relationship with our allies? Does Netanyahu sit back and say, why would he put that out there? Why would he say that? Why are you answering the question that way? Where is the basis that you would have any trust in Iran to do anything? I always laugh when they say we're going to usher in these deals with Iran.
We're going to throw down. We're going to play 3-on-3 basketball. We're going to send in Dennis Rodman.
Exactly.
It's all going to work itself out.